So we are on lesson 2.7, and with lesson 2.7, I'm on page 130. So let's find page 130 in your book, and remember, whatever I underline or highlight, I want you to underline and highlight. We're still looking at slope. We're still looking at our graphs. So this essential question is, how does the slope relate to the equation for a proportional relationship? Okay, so we're going to look at our constant of proportionality here and our slope. Okay, so if we look at example 1, it says the students in Meg's class are building a fence around the class garden. How can they use the pricing for the different lengths of fencing to determine the cost for 50 feet of fencing? Okay, 50 feet of fencing. Well, if we look at our different lengths here, okay, we have 6 feet is $30. We have 15 feet is $75. And we have 24 feet is $120. I want to remind you that this is our X and our Y. Our X, our Y, our X, and our Y. And so because we know by looking at this graph and because it tells us it's constant of proportionality, that means it is going through 0, 0. So to find my slope here, we could just take 30 divided by 6, or we could take 75 divided by 15, or we could take 120 divided by 24. And if we do that for every single one of those, we're going to get the same answer. Okay, and so our slope, or our constant of proportionality here, is 5/1. This is our slope. 30 divided by 6 is 5. We're just writing it as a fraction, 5/1. So 30 divided by 6 is 5. 75 divided by 15 is 5. 120 divided by 24 is 5. So our constant proportionality is 5. And so what does this 5 mean? This 5 means $5 for 1 foot of fencing. $5. Remember, we can look at our labels off of our graph to help us with this. The X is labeled with the length in feet. Remember, the X is on the bottom of our fraction. The Y is in the top of our fraction. And the total cost is dollars. So it's $5 for 1 foot. So the question is, well, how much is it going to cost me for 50 feet? Well, if it's $5 for 1 foot, that means it's going to be $10 for 2 feet. And we could keep counting by fives. Or we could just take, and they wrote it out here to the side, $5 times the 50 to get our total cost for 50 feet. Right above that, we can see the equation. We're going to talk more about that equation here in a little bit. So let's go ahead and look at my next slide and the try it. Now, of course, on this try it, it's asking us to write the equation. They've set the equation up for you. And I want to go ahead and I want you to write this down. Okay, our equation here, and it says analyze linear equations in y equals mx. This is our equation when we have a proportional relationship. Write this down, when we have a proportional relationship. What does that mean? That means that our graph is going through 0, 0. And the M is something super important. The M is your slope, or your constant of proportionality. So let's go ahead and look at this graph here. This graph is talking about distance per gallon. So how far we can drive our car and how many gallons of gas we will use. So let's go ahead, and the first question I want to ask you, does this go through 0, 0? Yes, it does. So we're going to use this equation. And all we're going to have to find for this equation is the slope, the m. That's why we did so much practice with slope. So let's go ahead, because it goes through 0, 0. Again, Mrs. Bohr doesn't usually like these boxes. Because it goes through 0, 0, all you have to do is pick one point. They actually have a point on here for you, and that point would be 4, 80. Remember, we want to label it x and y. So to find my slope, because it goes through 0, 0, remember we have y over x, so we have 80 divided by 4. And we know 80 divided by 4 is 20. So that's your slope. Now let's write the equation. Okay, your equation here, your final answer would be y equals your slope, which is 20, and x. So we are finding what the slope is, and then we are just writing it into our equation. Finding the missing part of our equation. Why can we write it like this? Because it goes through 0, 0. I was on page 130 for example 1 in that. Try it. We're going to move to page 1, and we're going to look at example 2. So now I'm on page 131. Okay. And on page 131, it's the same thing. What I want you to notice is we are going through 0, 0. So yeah, we can pick 2 points and find the slope. But let's just go ahead and find a point that we like. Okay, I'm going to pick this point right here. Remember, your x is your horizontal, so this point would be 1, negative 250. It's okay that it's negative, it's going down. So because that is the point we picked, and when we label that point x, y, and it goes through 0, 0, we know we can put y over x. So this is negative 250 over 1. And I would write this on your paper. Write this in your notes, because I'm doing this slope a little differently. I'm doing it the easy way because it's proportional and goes through 0, 0. So now let's just write the equation. That's all we have left to do. This is my m. Our equation, if it's proportional, is y equals mx. So we are going to plug in our slope, which is negative 250, in for the, we're going to substitute it in for the letter m. And you're done. So we are finding slope and just writing our equations. That's it. Let's look at our last try it. I am skipping example 3. We'll come back to graphing later. So I am skipping example 3. So when we look at the try it on the bottom 31, when we look at the try it on the bottom of page 131, we're only going to look at A because part B I haven't talked about yet. So it's saying write the equation of the line. Well, what does that mean? It means it wants you to write it in y equals, and this goes through 0, 0. So y equals mx. So all we need to do here is find the slope. This one's kind of yucky, I'm not going to lie. It doesn't give us very pretty numbers. Okay, let's go ahead and see if we can add these numbers in. If we know where the blue dot is at 0, 0, and we know that this mark is 10, what would be halfway between? This would be 5. So we're counting by 5s here. And then we go 10, and then we go 15, and then we go 20, and then we go 25. And same with our y-axis. They're counting by 5s. It's kind of important to know what they're counting by. So as I pick a point off my graph, and I want to pick where it's crossing 2 grid lines nicely. So I'm going to pick that green dot. What would that ordered pair be? Well, it would be 25 comma 10. I want you to label those, remember, X and Y. And so if we write our slope, it's going through 0, 0. So we can just take Y over X. What is my Y value? My Y value is 10. What is my X value? It's 25. You can leave your slope just like that. If you want to simplify and divide the numerator and denominator by 5, you can to get 2/5. But do not change it to a decimal, just leave it right there. And our equation, it said write the equation. So this is your M. So we're going to write our equation, which is Y equals, instead of the letter M, we're writing the 2 over 5, and we put the letter X with it, and we are done. So we are writing equations that are proportional relationships, meaning that they are going through 0, 0. That's it. We'll jump into our practice.